Iranian missile strikes killing at least 8 and injuring more than 70 people in central Israel overnight, and several buildings also suffered major damage.
Madeleine Rivera joins us now with more. Maddie.
Good morning, Carly and Todd. The number of casualties could change as search and rescue teams continue to look for more victims. The fighting, though, shows no signs of slowing down. Sirens rung out in Israel overnight as the military says a missile was launched from Yemen. The Israeli Air Force says it also hit command centers belonging to the Quds Force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee says the U.S. Embassy in Israel and consulate will remain closed today because a shelter in place is still in effect. Huckabee says there was some minor damage to the property because of shock waves from a nearby blast, but he says no U.S. Embassy staff are hurt. Brett Baer asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if a regime change is part of Israel's strategy in attacking Iran. Here's Netanyahu's response.
Could certainly be the result because the Iran regime is very weak. I think it's basically left with two things. It's plans to have atomic bombs and ballistic missiles. That's basically what Iran has. We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them.
Still, President Trump is hopeful Iran and Israel can strike some sort of agreement.
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
And the president is in Canada today for the G7 summit, where world leaders will likely talk about this fighting. Carly and Todd, back
All
to
right,
you.
Madeleine Rivera live for us. Maddie, thank you. Let's bring in Fox News contributor and former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman. Dan, good morning to you. So the latest analysis out of the Institute for the Study of War talks about the number of senior Iranian military officials who've been killed so far. I mean, these are some of the people who have the most influence in shaping Iranian military strategy, and many of them have been eliminated, which, Dan, has got to be a crucial factor to weigh as this war continues to play out.
Yeah, I think there are two critical points to be made there about Israel's targeting of Iran's military officials. First is that Israel is degrading Iran's ability to wage war, but also Israel has not targeted Iran's civilian leadership. And I think Israel's making the point that if Iran wants to swivel their course in foreign policy to a new direction, a less aggressive one, to negotiate in good faith on their nuclear program, then Israel would be open to that.
Meantime, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also on with Brett yesterday. It was a groundbreaking interview, a lot of news made in that interview. He warns that Iranians could soon attack the U.S. Listen to this.
Our intel shows that they intend to give these nuclear weapons to their Houthi proxies and others. And that's nuclear terrorism on a global scale. It threatens everyone. And the last thing is they have plans to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. Right now, 8,000 kilometers, very soon, just add a little distance, and they can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States.
Iran in the coming years.
Listen, that's certainly a concern similar to North Korea's development of an intercontinental ballistic missile armed with a nuclear weapon with an eye towards deterring the United States from being involved in the Korean Peninsula, just as Iran might seem to seek that same sort of power and control over the United States and deterring us from being involved in the Middle East. So, look, these are key issues for the United States intelligence community on which to focus. I'm not sure about Iran's plans to give any nuclear material to the Houthis, but Iran's nuclear program and their ballistic missile program and their support to proxy terrorists is a threat to U.S. national security in the region and beyond.
What about President Trump's part in all of this, Dan, and this reporting that he prevented an Israeli plan to assassinate the supreme leader? What do you think the president's calculation is there?
Well, I think President Trump has made it clear that the avenue for peace is open, that the United States is ready to negotiate when Iran is willing to do so in good faith. The president gave Iran 60 days to do so, and Iran did not negotiate in good faith. They were very openly defiant and concealed their uranium enrichment from the IAEA, which censored them. So, look, the president is giving Iran an out here, and the question for the Iranians is whether they might have to drink from the poison chalice, as Ayatollah Khomeini said in 1988 at the end of their war with Iraq, to resolve that war and enter into diplomatic negotiations because they had no choice. That may be where Iran is headed in this case, and President Trump is certainly willing to entertain that option as a means to end this war in the Middle East.
Yeah, and that revelation that President Trump apparently vetoed a plan to kill the Iranian supreme leader is even more notable in the fact that Iran has repeatedly tried to kill President Trump, which is something that Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about yesterday.
Yeah, let's get into that, Dan, because to me, that was one of the other things that came out of this interview that was a little bit surprising. So I want to lean on your intel expertise here. Were you surprised when Netanyahu said Iran tried to assassinate Trump twice, especially that inference, that implication, without saying it in so many words, that Butler and the golf course attempts were connected to Iran?
Yeah, it was for sure Iran military, their Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. There's shades here of post-World War II when the United States allowed the Emperor of Japan to remain in power as a means of solidifying post-war peace. And the potential for the Ayatollah to deliver that is certainly not one that the Trump administration would want to exclude. Hence, the decision, at least on the part of President Trump, as far as we know, to encourage Israel not to launch that sort of a strike.
Well, we are now in day 4, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday that they are going to be at this for as long as it takes. Dan, thank you for joining us.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.